She drove a sewing needle straight through her own infant's soft skull as a blood offering, then hanged herself so her rotting spirit could keep hunting children forever. And that same dead mother still crawls into beds across Rhode Island tonight, leaving fresh claw marks and the stench of open graves. That farmhouse on Round Top Road is only the first tear in the veil. Rhode Island may be the smallest state in the Union, but its soil is soaked in centuries of blood, betrayal, and unfinished death. Behind the postcard lighthouses and Gilded Age mansions runs a darker current that pulls the living under and never lets them surface clean. Tonight, we walk the places where the dead do not rest and the living leave marked, torn, and changed. This is not legend polished for tourists. This is the raw, rotting truth of the ocean state's most haunted ground. It begins in the woods of Weatherill, at the farmhouse the world now calls the Conjuring House. Built in 1736, the old clapboard structure waited patiently for fresh meat. When the Perron family moved in during the 1970s, the house woke hungry. Bathsheba Sherman's spirit still ruled those rooms. Local law claims she murdered her own infant, with that needle driven deep into the baby's skull as an offering, then bound her soul to the land by the noose. The Perron children felt her first. Night after night, something heavy crawled across their beds, pressing down until ribs creaked and breath stopped. One daughter woke with long bleeding scratches carved into her chest and thighs, wounds that wept for days and refused to scab cleanly. Roger Perron was lifted clean off the floor by invisible hands and slammed into walls hard enough to split skin and leave him coughing blood. Carolyn Perron was possessed outright. Her face blackened, her voice dropped into a guttural snarl not her own, and she spoke of rotting meat and the taste of a child's blood still hot on her tongue. During the famous seance, a force hurled furniture, cracked bones, and left the living gasping in air thick with the stench of decay. Investigators still report the same: sudden freezing cold that burns the lungs, the sensation of needles sliding under fingernails, and the wet sound of something dragging a small body across the attic floorboards. Bathsheba does not want company, she wants vessels. Travel south to Newport, and the opulence turns rancid inside Belcourt Castle. Oliver Belmont's 1890s summer palace is stuffed with antiques that carry their own dead. Two chairs in particular reject the living with violence. Sit in one, and an unseen force yanks you upward and flings you across the room, leaving bruises the exact shape of crushing fingers. A full suit of armor has been seen turning its helmet toward visitors, visor lifting just enough to reveal a face of dried blood and writhing maggots. Guests describe icy hands clamping around their throats in empty corridors, squeezing until black spots dance and the copper taste of blood fills the mouth. One woman felt something sink its teeth into the back of her neck. She left with puncture wounds that later oozed a dark, foul fluid that smelled of the grave. Shadow figures in period dress glide through the ballroom, their faces peeling away in wet strips, eyes nothing but glistening sockets. The air itself grows heavy with the smell of old blood and perfume gone sour. The dead here do not haunt, they collect. Just across the water in Jamestown, Fort Wetherill crouches on the cliffs like a concrete skull. Once a coastal battery, it became a dumping ground when the bodies of young women were found floating near the docks, throats opened ear to ear, limbs tangled in seaweed and rope. The fort swallowed their terror whole. More than 200 police reports describe the same horrors, the sound of frantic splashing and gurgling screams rising from empty water, the sudden appearance of pale women with gaping neck wounds who reach out with waterlogged fingers, skin sloughing off in grey sheets that slap against the rocks. Visitors feel invisible hands shove them toward the cliff edge with real force. Others wake from blackouts with deep gouges across their arms and the unmistakable sensation of being held underwater, lungs screaming, while cold lips press against their ears, whispering the names of the dead. At night, the tunnels fill with the wet slap of bare feet and the copper reek of fresh arterial spray that no living person spilled. Deeper inland, the ruins of the Lad School in Exeter still breathe misery. Opened in 1908 as the Rhode Island School for the Feeble-Minded, it became a warehouse of neglect, forced sterilization, and quiet killing under the banner of eugenics. Children and adults were beaten, starved, left in their own waste, and buried without names when their bodies finally gave out. The buildings were abandoned in 1994, but the screaming never stopped. Trespassers described the sudden crush of small hands around their ankles, dragging them toward dark basements with impossible strength. Disembodied moans rise into full-throated shrieks of pure agony that freeze the blood. One investigator felt a child-sized form climb onto his back. When he spun around, he saw a boy whose face had been half eaten away, eyes milky, mouth stretched in a silent howl that still sprayed black fluid. Batteries die instantly. Cameras capture streaks of thick black fluid running down walls that are dry to the touch. The air turns dense with the stink of unwashed bodies, open sores, and rotting meat. Those who linger too long leave with unexplained bruises in the shape of restraints and the lingering taste of bile and blood that no amount of water can wash out. In the quiet village of Exeter, Chestnut Hill Cemetery holds the grave of Mercy Lena Brown, Rhode Island's most famous vampire. In 1892, tuberculosis was tearing families apart. When Mercy died at 19, her brother Edwin was already wasting away to skin and bone. Desperate villagers exhumed her body 2 months after burial. What they found was not peaceful decay. Mercy's corpse was shockingly preserved, hair and nails still growing, and her heart was engorged with fresh liquid blood. They cut the heart out with a knife, burned it on a nearby rock until the fat popped and sizzled, and mixed the ashes into a tonic for Edwin. He drank it and died anyway, choking on the taste of his sister. Mercy's spirit did not forgive the violation. Visitors to her grave report the ground growing hot beneath their feet, as if something below is thrashing and clawing upward. Cold spots form in the exact shape of a young woman who appears with blood pouring in thick sheets from the ragged hole in her chest, eyes black with rage. People have been scratched deeply across the face and chest while standing at the stone, the wounds burning as though packed with grave dirt and still wet ash. At night, the cemetery fills with the wet, rattling sound of coughing and the slow, deliberate scrape of fingernails against coffin wood coming from under the earth. The Ramtail Factory ruins in Foster still carry the screams of children. In the 19th century, the mill worked kids until their small bodies broke. Some were forced into the machinery to clear jams. Gears took fingers, arms, entire scalps in sprays of blood and hair. The 1885 state census actually listed the place as haunted. Today the foundations stand in the woods, and the air carries the high, thin shrieks of children in fresh pain. Dark figures no taller than a 10-year-old dart between the stones. One witness felt tiny hands grab his wrist with bone-breaking strength and pull him toward a collapsed raceway. When he yanked free, his skin was covered in small, perfect bite marks that later blistered, wept, and left scars. The sound of grinding metal and wet crunching of bone follows those who stay after dark. Fresh blood has been found dripping from empty air onto the moss below. Back in Newport, Seaview Terrace, also called Sprague Mansion, looms like a French nightmare brought to life. The 1925 chateau has collected its own roster of the restless. Staff and visitors describe a woman in period dress whose face is a ruin of burns, skin hanging in blackened, dripping flaps that expose raw meat underneath. She appears in mirrors standing directly behind the living, close enough to feel her heat, then vanishes when they turn, leaving only the thick smell of scorched flesh. Heavy footsteps pace empty upper floors. Doors slam hard enough to crack frames and send splinters flying. One overnight investigator woke completely paralyzed while a crushing weight settled on his chest and something cold and wet forced its way between his lips, filling his mouth with the taste of ash, old blood, and burnt skin. He could not scream. When the pressure finally lifted, perfect handprints in deep bruises covered his torso and throat. Fort Adams in Newport adds military dead to the chorus. The massive stone fortress has tunnels where soldiers still march in formation. Footsteps echo with the clink of gear that is no longer there. Shadowy figures in rotting old uniforms appear at the end of corridors and dissolve into mist that stinks of gangrene and open wounds. A child's voice has been recorded whispering, "You're not supposed to see me. right before equipment fails and people feel small, freezing fingers dig into their necks hard enough to leave deep crescent-shaped wounds that bleed for hours. Sudden cold spots drop the temperature so fast that breath turns to ice crystals and exposed skin cracks open and bleeds. The Sprague Mansion in Cranston carries family murder in its walls. Amasa Sprague was bludgeoned to death in 1843. His skull caved in on a cold road until bone fragments mixed with brain matter on the frozen ground. Inside the mansion, a little girl named Theodora is heard laughing, right before objects fly with enough force to split skin and crack bone. Cold hands shove visitors down staircases, hard enough to leave them broken at the bottom. Apparitions of a man with a ruined, gaping head have been seen standing at the foot of beds, blood and thicker things still dripping from the cavity where his face should be, staring in silence until the living cannot draw breath and their hearts hammer against their ribs like they want out. These places are not separate. They form a single open wound across Rhode Island. The dead here remember every cut, every drowning gasp, every final betrayal. They wear their deaths like clothing, necks open and flapping, chests hollowed out, skin burned or waterlogged or shredded by machinery. They reach for the living not to communicate, but to share the damage, to make the living feel every second of their ending. Scratches appear without cause and run deep enough to scar. Bruises bloom overnight in the shape of hands that no longer have bones. The smell of blood and rot follows you home and seeps into your clothes no matter how many times you wash them. Some visitors leave pieces of themselves behind without knowing until the nightmares begin, the marks refuse to heal, and something cold starts whispering their name in the dark. Rhode Island keeps its horrors close, wrapped in fog and salt air and polite history plaques. But the plaques lie. The real record is written in the flesh of everyone who has stepped too far into these sites and felt the dead push back with teeth and nails and needle-sharp hunger. The smallest state holds some of the deepest graves, and those graves are not finished with us. Walk lightly, or do not walk at all. The ones who wait have all the time in the world, and they are very, very hungry. If this walked with you into the dark, comment your own encounter, or the location that got under your skin the worst, and subscribe so you do not miss the next descent. The dead are already listening.